Hi, I'm Valerie Espinoza, your New Mexico Public Regulation Commissioner, and I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of our program. With us today, we have a very special friend, and I guess we could call ourselves collaborates or co-workers. Patrick Lyons serves on the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission as well, and he represents a portion of the district that I'm going to let him talk about. So I'd like to welcome you to our program, and the reason he's here is because he happens to be running for the New Mexico Land Commission, but I called it something else, and it's really the
Commissioner of Public Lands.
Commissioner of Public Lands. So we're going to put him on the spot and ask him a lot of questions, but first of all, I truly want to welcome you and thank you for taking time to be here with me.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Espinoza. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for having me, and just to put in a little bit, I've been really enjoyed working with you at the Public Regulation Commission over the last few years, and we've been working together well, and thank you for your help on all the issues.
I want to say thank you as well. It's been great, and you truly are a great guy, and I wish you luck on your next endeavor, and I'll come visit you at the land office because I remember you used to host those meat fests.
Beast Feast.
The Beast Feast, and that was the best lunch and meat and food I've ever had, so I look forward to it, and I know you carry that tradition at the PRC where you bring in, sort of like a
My big old grill I bring in for everybody and cook up a bunch of meats on July 4th weekend for all the staff and the commissioners there. I enjoy doing it too.
Yeah, so let's talk about the land office or the Commission of Public Lands, and I know there's some portion of the funding that goes to the schools, but why don't you tell us, since you've been at the Land Commission before and served there, what exactly that job entails and what funds are you responsible for and land and everything about it?
Well, the Commissioner of Public Lands, that's how it's stated on the ballot, and that's how it is in our Constitution. And when you say public lands, you really mean state trust lands. And we have 9 million acres of surface state trust lands and 13 million acres of subsurface. And our fiducial responsibility on those lands is to produce revenue for education, for our beneficiaries, mainly education, in a sustainable way. And that's what we did as a commissioner before.
What year did you serve?
I served from 2003 to 2010. And it was the best job I ever had. I really enjoyed managing the state trust lands. And we managed them for education. And in doing that, we were able to raise $4 billion.
Billion, not million.
B as in big. $4 billion in those 8 years, about a half a billion a year, $500 million a year. And one thing I'm really proud of what we did there, out of that $4 billion, every single dollar was accounted for. Every single dollar. So that's honesty in government, and I thought we did a great job there, and that's why we want to come back and do it. We want to come back and do it because education is our most important asset. We need our children are our most important asset and funding it. So the money we raise, most of it goes to our land grant permanent fund, which we take about 5% out of each year to fund education, to fund the beneficiaries, with 82% of it going through K through 12, the rest of it to some universities, School for the Deaf, School for the Blind, and then there's a few other little small things like Carrie Tingley. When I was commissioner before, I always tried to get Carrie Tingley Children's Hospital more money because they were our smallest beneficiaries. So if we ever had any land exchanges, and there's excess land, we always made them the beneficiary because that's one of our important children's hospitals in New Mexico.
Outstanding. I want to hear about where you're from, what area you represent on the PRC. If you win for land commissioner, naturally you're going to represent the entire state. But right now, where are you from? And tell us about your family.
Okay, I'll give you a little good background here. I'm a third-generation rancher from central eastern New Mexico. I have a ranch between Clovis and Tucumcari, and we've been there 3 generations on the ranch. I farm about 900 acres, and the rest of it is ranch land. I have a wife and 3 children. One thing that's got me really involved in this process, running for Commissioner of Public Lands, I have a handicapped daughter who went to school for visually handicapped for 10 years in Alamogordo. So that's thinking, well, they need good funding down there, and that most of their funding comes from Commissioner of Public Lands, from the State Land Office.
I'm amazed to learn that.
Yeah, about $20 million a year comes from the State Land Office for fund. About $20 million goes for the School for the Deaf and the School for Visually Handicapped. So that's one of our most important funding sources for those 2 schools for our children growing up that have a handicap there. So anyway, I farm and ranch on the east side of the state. I represent Public Regulation Commissioner District 2, which is the largest district in the state. It's about the eastern half of the state there. It's a large rural district.
Spread out.
It's spread out from the Colorado border to the Texas border and all the way down towards El Paso area, right north of there. So it's been a pleasure serving it. It's a large area. We've done a lot of rate cases together there. We have a rate case there now again, so we're involved in, and we look forward to finishing strong there. And one thing I always count on to PRC with you is you show up every week, you work hard, and you're there, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And I truly have appreciated working with you one-on-one. We don't always agree, just like the rest of us, on certain issues, but boy, when we work together on behalf of the public.
That's right. We try to do what's best for the state of New Mexico.
That's right. And weren't you just recently, now that you were talking about your ranch hand, or you're working on the ranch, you have so much compassion, not only for people, but for animals. You were taking care of 2 sick cows.
I did. Last week I was half a day late coming in here because I had some calves getting sick on the cows there, so I had to go out and doctor 3 of them out in the pasture and take care of them. And that's why we think we're the best candidate for the Commissioner of Public Lands, because we know how to manage the lands, take care of them. If you take care of the lands, they take care of you. They'll take care of their beneficiaries in a sustainable way. And we wanted to try to generate that revenue for education and our beneficiaries off of that state trust lands.
Outstanding. So you just recently filed at the Secretary of State's office, took your petitions in, so you are an official candidate for the land office.
Yeah, on Tuesday, all the statewide candidates filed, and I went over there, and everything went really smooth. I got to hand it to our Secretary of State there, Maggie. She did a great job, and everything went real smooth there for everybody. And so we're going to be on the ballot officially. It's an uncontested primary. I'm the only Republican running, so there will be I don't know who I'm going to run with in general, but the general election will be November 6th.
All right, and the primary is?
The primary, it's uncontested for me, but the primary is June 5th this year.
June 5th, that's right. All right, well, we wish you lots of luck. And as we talk about, the PRC and the legislature, tell me something. I know there was a bill or proposed, and one point I didn't support it, but now I'm on board with you to support the bill that has to do with appointed versus elected PRC commissioners. And I kind of, have learned a whole awful lot more about how I think appointed works better than elected to appoint. I respect that people need to have representation, but on the other hand, with this position, I think it's a very difficult job. It's very technical. You have to be qualified. You have to, do you agree?
I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner, because I've been a proponent of changing the way the public regulation commissioners are elected. There's 35 states in this nation out of 50 that appoint the PRC, appoint your commissioners to run the utility. It's mainly utilities what we deal with there. And I think New Mexico will be better because we have qualifications. I think they should be appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate, and like all the appointments on boards and commissions, not over majority of one party. So if there was a 5-member, it'd be 3 from one party, not over 3 from one party. So I think it'll be a balance there. But I think it's absolutely, I think New Mexico would function a lot better that the Public Regulation Commission if those were appointed then by the governor and then confirmed by the Senate. And I believe it works smoother because you'd have a better background of people. And I know a lot of people don't want to go away from the elected, but that's what other states have done, and I think it runs smoother, and I think it runs smooth here in New Mexico if we did that. I've pushed for a constitutional amendment several times. It has to go to the people to vote on, so let them vote on it. If they want to do it, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. Let the people, the voters in New Mexico, vote on that change, and I think it would go through myself.
Well, what's going to happen? Since you used to be a state senator for many years, I know I talked to Representative Rod Montoya. He's one of the sponsors of the, I don't know if it's a House bill or if it's right now what it is, a memorial that they're trying to push through. He said he didn't think it was going to go anywhere. And then, there was also that concern, well, if there's a Republican governor, if there's a Democratic governor, then they're going to put in somebody who might not be qualified. So do you really think this is going to go anywhere? I hope it does.
This is the big issue with the Public Service Company of New Mexico. They're getting out of coal up in the Four Corners area. Out of both plants, San Juan plant and the Four Corners plant. But there's a lot of bonding, there's a lot of capital out there that's not going to be recouped, which is called stranded cost. So somehow they want the company, P&M, to be able to recoup their stranded costs at the same time not have a big impact on the ratepayer. So to do that, we don't, at the PRC, the commissioners, you and I, we don't have the ability to do the bonding there. So that has to pass the legislature to give the PRC the right to do the bonding, let the P&M float their own bonds, sell their own bonds, and that money will be used to pay off the stranded costs rather than sticking it on the ratepayer as a stranded cost. I think it's a good idea. There's been some complications with this bill now. I believe it'll go through interim committee, and you'll see a better, more better bill probably in the 2019 session.
So you have a long history of service, and you were a very effective senator way back when. How long did you serve as state senator back then?
I was in the state senate for 10 years. And
I think you taught me a lot about you know, how it worked to, you know, the game and fish and get permits, landowner permits, and
right.
I've always remembered you for that, and thank you for that, because
yeah,
it puts food on the table. and so, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but how long ago did you serve as state senator?
I served from 1993 to 2002, 10 years there, and it was a great learning experience. I got to learn where all the revenues come from. I served on the Senate Finance Committee for 6 years, and I served on the Legislative Finance Committee for 6 years. In fact, I got to serve on there for 8 years because Stuart Engel, who represents the same side of the state I did, he had an aneurysm there, and I took his place as a freshman senator for a couple of years, and it was really a pleasure to do that. So I got to learn where all the revenues come from, where it all goes out, how the money is distributed, and a great learning experience.
Is your picture on the wall like the rest of the senators?
No, I was a minority caucus member, but I don't think my picture was on the wall.
Oh, bummer, because my grandpa Reggie's is on the wall there from way back when. He's also an R like you, but but we go to show, you know, that in the day, you know, that we can work together. But in the days that my grandfather served as senator and state representative and chair of the DOT or the Highway Commission, you know, back in those days, it seems that, you know, people worked for the best interest of the public rather than being so partisan. It almost seems that there's such a difference now. It seems that instead of working together like they did way back then with, you know, for instance, my grandfather, Reggie Espinoza and Emilio Naranjo, one had a business across the street from the other, gas station and the restaurant, and yeah, they work well together, and I think, you know, you and I work well together, but it shouldn't be so partisan.
Today it seems to be more divided. You're exactly right, Valerie, and it's something I don't like. I don't like the far left. I don't like the far right. I think we should work together and move towards middle consensus and make Mexico a better state, and that's what we try to do as Commissioner of Public Lands before. I mean, I think it's so important to create jobs and try to keep our younger people here in the state once they graduate. And when I was commissioner right off, as a Commissioner of Public Lands the first time, because I can get commissioner mixed up between PRC and commissioner, land commissioner. So as land commissioner before, we helped bring the Union Pacific Railroad to Santa Teresa. And how we did that was through a series of land exchanges. It took like 3 land exchanges to do that. They wanted to move their headquarters out of El Paso to New Mexico. There's no room to expand in El Paso. So we did a series of land exchanges. And it took a while, but we got them the land there from the BLN private state land, and they put in this big infrastructure down there, about $2 billion plus 600 permanent jobs plus the construction jobs. So I think that's how important it is that the land commissioner work with everyone to help bring jobs to the economy here.
So you've always been an advocate that I've observed in the last over 5 years that you're all about the economy, you're all about jobs. What are your plans for the land office in terms of bringing more?
I think that the Commissioner of Public Lands has to be able to work with nearly every entity in the state and the private sector. Our income comes from the private sector. So we have to do, I did the first wind lease at the state land office when I was there. We want to continue to promote wind and solar in this state, and geothermal. There's a great geothermal lease we've done, and there's 3 or 4 places in the state to do that. So we can do alternative energy there if we can go down that route. Also, 82 or 92% of our revenue comes from oil and gas. So we have to work with the oil and gas companies really good and to make sure that that income keeps coming in for education. And then you also, being a farmer rancher, we do agriculture leases, and we want to make sure the grazing leases, the farm leases, the crop leases, everything goes smooth there. Another very important aspect of the land office is commercial leases that we're expanding into. Back in 2006 and 7 when I was there was never going to be another bad day in housing. So everybody wanted a plan and development lease. Of course, the housing, bubble burst there in 08, and we had a downturn there. But we did a lot of planning and development leases. But one thing we did at the land office is we always had a clawback clause on that. If the company we did the lease with didn't meet up to their expectations, then that land all reverted back to the state of New Mexico. There was one particular section down by Las Cruces. We did a planning and development lease. The guy did $750,000 worth of improvements to the land, then he didn't hold up to it. The housing bubble burst, housing went down, and so we got all the land back to do it again. So I think it's very important to be able to work with the private sector, because they're the ones that bring jobs and dollars to the economy here. And I think that we can do that better than any other commissioner candidate here is work with the private sector to help enhance New Mexico.
You certainly know an awful lot about that office, and I remember way back when I was county clerk, there was an issue with mineral rights. And do you know anything about it? Does the land office work with mineral rights throughout the state?
Mineral rights is probably our most important asset at the land office, because most of our income comes from underground mineral rights. And where you get in a problem with those mineral rights, and your particular case was when the surface is owned by someone different than the subsurface. The subsurface is a mineral right. That could include water and gravel and caliche and oil and gas and coal, whatever is under the surface. Sometimes there's a dual ownership, where the surface is owned by someone different than the subsurface. And when that happens, you have to really negotiate a good deal where it's fair to all concerned, the surface owner and the mineral right owner, to make sure it's worked out between them two and they both benefit, and the state of New Mexico and the state land office and our educational institutions also benefit. Was
there an issue with the ownership? Is that how it worked? Do you remember any of that? Wasn't it, how do you prove that you own a mineral right?
Well, that's filed at the county clerk's office in each county on the mineral.
But that was a difficulty in trying to figure out,
do you
really own that mineral right? And it wasn't always filed at, as a landowner, they didn't really file that portion of the right.
Yeah, when lands sell, sometimes they don't have a really good selling document that says this land is conveyed with all mineral rights. Water rights is another deal, with water rights and with surface rights. And if that document isn't spelled out exactly like that, there is a dispute a lot of times on that.
Yeah, I think there was in the basin here in Santa Fe somewhere. It might have been in
Galisteo Basin,
bingo,
exactly
bingo,
where
bingo.
You're
Yeah.
talking about.
So as you bring up all these issues with relation to the rights and water and land, I thought I'd ask you, and naturally you had an answer for me. So what do you plan to do as land commissioner in the future, given that solar's big now, and what are your plans for that office?
Well, I have several plans. When we first get in there, we want to look over what's all been done in the last 4 years, see what we can do to help enhance that, make sure we bring in enough revenue for education. For the solar leases, some of the best solar spots in the United States are right down there in Hidalgo County outside of Lordsburg, in the whole United States. So we think we have a great opportunity to do that. But you can develop all this wind and solar you want, but if you don't have transmission lines, it doesn't do any good. So one of the main things you have to do is make sure there's a transmission line to be able to pick up that generation and move it. Most of that's going to go out of state to California or on over to the east, where they don't have wind and solar as well. And a lot of those states are passing renewable portfolio standards. And I think in New Mexico we can be a producer of that renewable energy and ship it out of state. But you got to have that transmission line. To do that, you got to work through the landowner process of moving it. And there's several big lines going here, which you have seen at the commission, such as the Sunzia line, and then the line down south, and there's a northern line going. So that'd be very important to do that. Also at the land office, we have to connect with the people. We have 9 field offices around the state. And I mean, there one in Albuquerque and Las Cruces and Silver City, Farmington, Hobbs, Carlsbad, Clovis, so they're all around state. So you have to make sure those field offices are staffed properly and they connect with the people. That's how we get a lot of input from the public through them. Also, we have a statutory advisory committee that's appointed by the commissioner himself, confirmed. Each member has to be confirmed by the Senate. Those have to be a diverse background. One's got to be from agriculture, one's from mining, one from recreation. And so there's a 7-member board that you have to have taken care of there. So we think that's very important to get good board members on there. We meet quarterly and get input from them on what to do around the state.
Can we talk a little bit about the Southwest Power Pool as we go back and forth from commission, land commission to commission of the PRC? You're on the Southwest Power Pool board, which also helps you immensely with your background.
The Southwest Power Pool is a regional transmission authority, and the purpose of that is to save building generation and build transmission line to move electricity from one state to the other. That right now is a 10-state organization, which I've been a member of for 7 years as a PRC member from District 2, because it's mainly Southwestern Public Services in that. And building all those transmission lines saves, so in Oklahoma City, if it's 80 degrees there and it's 100 degrees in Hobbs, we ship that electricity to Hobbs or vice versa throughout the 10-state area. So it saves building a lot of generation. I firmly believe that Public Service Company in New Mexico should join a regional transmission authority like that. In fact, I put out a request that they look into that and try to do that, because that'll save building a lot of generation, saves the ratepayers money, because you can just move that electricity around where it's needed throughout the area. And I think it's one of the better things we have going is regional transmission authorities with that throughout the United States. There's a lot of areas that are tied together now like that, so we could do that here too.
So is there anything you'd like to accomplish before you leave the New Mexico Public Regulation?
Well, we're going to be out of there on December 31st, so some of the main things I'd like to do, we have a couple rate cases there I'd like to get settled. Also, we have a couple wind farms there that need to be, see if we're going to authorize them or not, make sure the rate doesn't go up for the ratepayer. We'd like to see those develop, finish the rate cases, and just work with all the commissioners on getting things done around the state that's best for New Mexico.
Interesting. Tell us more too about, you brought up the geothermal plants, the two in the state, for those that aren't familiar of how they work and what they generate and produce and enable.
We have a lot of good geothermal down by Animas, New Mexico, right in the southwest corner. In fact, there used to be a rose plant down there. Dale Burkett had roses down there, and he shipped them up here. We did a lease with him down there. We did a lease for a fish farm down there, use that. And right now they want to use that geothermal to produce electricity, which you and I both approved that about a month ago on that, to do that geothermal down there. I think there's a lot of potential around it. There's 3 or 4 other sites around New Mexico that has geothermal potential. And in our diversification, we have it at the PRC that says 5% other. Well, that geothermal would qualify for that. And that's a good way to produce electricity through leases there. We would do leases from the state land office to that company, so we'd generate income for the state land office or beneficiaries, at the same time produce electricity for the people in New Mexico.
Outstanding. I know they have here at the College of Santa Fe, they're moving towards that as well. I don't know if you've been on a tour here, but this is a remarkable campus.
Oh yes, it amazes me coming out here. It just keeps growing and growing. I hadn't been here in a couple of years, and you see all this stuff, and you couldn't even find a parking spot out there.
I know that it's parking's in demand because it's just so much going on here, and I don't know if you saw the art display out there and the wood carvings as you walked here.
Yeah.
It is remarkable. So is there anything else you'd like to tell the public, and as you are seeking the office of Public Land Commissioner?
Well, I just want to say that the Commissioner of Public Lands has a great duty in this state to help generate revenue for our beneficiaries, mainly education, in a sustainable way. We've done that before better than any other land commissioner. You got to take care of the land; it takes care of you. We've done all kinds of leases there. We feel like, and I love the job. I love managing the lands, and I would really appreciate being the next Commissioner of Public Lands. I think we can do a great job there for the state of New Mexico.
Do you know how many staff you have or would have, or is it increased or decreased since the budget's been banned? Do you know what staffing's like now?
I do. We have about 156 employees at the State Land Office with about a $15 million budget. That budget doesn't come from general fund. It comes from leases that we do there. So it's kind of self-sustaining office. And between 156, 160 employees, we can make that land office run very well, very efficient.
I know there's a lot of employees at the PRC that would like to go work with you should you win. Anyhow, it's such a different job though, and if you think about it, you still represent the people, but it's a different setup. Right now we have 5 commissioners, 1 chief of staff, who has to work for 5 different people, 5 different personalities, and and I think that's it's a different, there you run the shop. Here, it's sort of, there's 5 people, 1 person answers. What do you think about that?
Well, when I was in the Senate, I was only 1 of 42 votes. When I'm at the PRC, I'm 1 of 5 votes. When you're Commissioner of Public Lands, you are the vote.
That's it.
So
That's
you have
right.
10 exempt positions that you hire people for, assistant commissioners. Those are very important positions. Cause
what are they?
Assistant commissioner, you have the assistant commissioner of oil and gas, assistant commissioner of commercial, assistant commissioner for field, assistant commissioner for agriculture, and then you have, of course, your ASD director is assistant commissioner too, and special projects assistant commissioner. But I believe that the Commissioner of Public Lands is probably the most nonpartisan position in the state of New Mexico out of the 7 executive positions, because we don't vote on bills, introduce legislation, vote on bills and what to do and what not to do on it. So we just try to manage the lands as best you can. So it's really nonpartisan. You just try
And
to
it should
get
be.
It should be, exactly right. You're exactly
Sort of
right,
like the
Valerie.
Secretary of State's office. It should be nonpartisan,
Nonpartisan.
working for all parties and people.
That's right, working for all New Mexico. So that's why we like it, because it's nonpartisan. We work with everybody very well, and we will continue to do that. But it's important to get your assistant commissioners there, because you can't do it all in the statewide. You have to rely on them to do it. And we feel like we can put together a very good team to help benefit New Mexico.
That's a huge staff, 160?
160.
Yeah. We're at about 150 at the PRC, is that right?
That's correct.
And
almost the same size.
We probably need to hire more people, and the criteria for the commissioners is, they set the bar, and I think the criteria for the employees too. I mean, who's going to work at the PRC when they can make, the big bucks elsewhere for a different utility? So we really need to try to recruit some talented staff.
That's a big difference between the Commissioner of Public Lands, the State Land Office, and the PRC. It is really complicated material you're dealing with. Utilities. When I first got there, it was a learning curve straight up, and I thought I knew a lot. But you find out when you get there, you don't. So you're exactly right. We need to hire really competent, educated people and know utilities and know telecom, know electricity, know gas, and you have to have the analysis of people to analyze all that. So yes, we need some real specialized positions at the PRC.
And I think now that there might be some legislation, and I'm not sure if that's true, they're trying to remove the fire marshal. Do you know anything about?
That's been talked about, to move the fire marshal's office over to the Department of Public Safety and move Transportation Department transportation. I don't know if anything's going to get through this session. That's just been talking. The session's only 1 more week to go, so they'll probably, with a new governor, new legislature in 2019, there'll be a lot of stuff being introduced to change, and that'll probably have to go through interim committees and then see what happens there. But as for this session, this legislative session is probably the most quiet one I've seen in 20 years. It's really,
no kidding. What's up with that? I mean,
I don't know. We have $300 million of extra money, but there's not that much going on there, so everybody just kind of, I think they're waiting for a change of guard and see what anticipate for the next 4 years after this.
Well, you truly are regarded over there, and you have a lot of friends there, and so I just want to say thank you again, and thank you for working with me on issues that are important to me and to the public, and what are in the best interest of the public. So I really appreciate your help, and I look forward to finishing off our terms together.
Well, I do too, Valerie. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and thank you for being so helpful, and I want to thank all of New Mexico. Appreciate their support.
There you go. Good luck, and we'll be welcoming you back anytime you want to appear on the program. Right before the primary, after the primary, right. You're welcome back. We'd be happy to have you.
I'll come back anytime.
All righty. Well, now you know where to find us, right?
I know. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank you for watching, and if you'd like to appear on my program, please give me a call at 827-4533. Thank you very much.